In this video we are going to add a unit frame for our enemy so that we can see the selected target up here as we can see the player's health and mana, and we will also add some text so we can see the actual value of the health up here. So the easiest thing is to actually copy the player's portrait frame. So if we would select the frame here and duplicate it, we should be able to go to our scene and select the frame and hover over here and press F, and then we should be able to move this to the right, and this is the position of our enemy portrait frame right here. So right now the face and everything is on the left side. Well, I would like it to be on the right side of the bars, so basically I would take these two, move them out, and take the frame and the face and move it to the right side instead, like so. So the target has its frame to the right of the bars, and the ourself is to the left of the bars. When you've done that, you can select the bars again and put them as child objects once again. So we have the whole frame and we can move everything here. Yeah, right there. So this is our enemy's face we're going to show, right? I have added a new sprite here called skeleton face, and it's under the portrait frame under sprites. So you can simply just go and re-download the sprites, and this skeleton face should be there. Right now it's a picture face, so I'm just going to replace this. So this will of course be replaced on the fly, which means when I target another thing like an NPC, it will be his face up here. Right now we don't need a mana, so let's just comment it out, or let's just what's it called, deactivate it. That's what the word I'm looking for. So let's just deactivate it and keep the health here. Later maybe we should add a name for the enemy we have on target, but for now let's just leave it like this. So this is the enemy's health bar. Right now it's using bar 1. I would like it to use the white one. Sorry, not bar 1. The health here is using bar 2. I would like it to use the white one instead, and then we can select it and we can change the color. I would like it to be the same color as the enemy's health down here. So if I select my enemy and find my health canvas and background health, I can take and copy the hex color here and use it up here in my health bar, like so. So now it has the same color. So that is actually the health bar. We will have to write some scripts so that we can actually update it. This has to be done from our UI manager. So if we open scripts and find our UI manager, then we'll have to add some extra functionality to it. We're doing it in the UI manager because I wanted to handle all UI actions, and showing a unit frame is a UI action, I think. So the first thing we have to do is to make a private game object and call it target frame. Yeah, so our target frame is going to be the actual unit frame that should show our target. So we can actually just serialize this so that we can set it from the inspector, and then we'll have to create a new function, and that function is going to be called show target frame. So let's go down here, void show target frame. So right now it's not taking anything, and it should actually take in an NPC. So let's just do that. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do like this: NPC target. Remember, we can target all NPCs, which means we should also be able to target a quest giver or a vendor or something like that. So with that done, we will have to say target frame dot set active true. So we'll have to show the frame. So that's the first step. The next step is to call this. Well, where do we call it? When we can call it from our game manager inside the click target. So if we go to game manager, we have the click target function here, and after we set the target and everything, we can actually show the target frame or the UI unit frame here. How do you do that? Well, we don't have a reference to the UI manager right here, and instead of just making a reference by creating a new variable or new script, I would like to make this into a singleton. A singleton is a design pattern that are widely used, and a design pattern is some kind of pattern or some kind of structure that can be reused in lots of different purposes or circumstances, right? So someone figured out that this way of writing some code can be reused other places, so they created it as a design pattern, and the design pattern has a name and you can reuse that design pattern in different ways, right? So in short, a design pattern is some kind of template you can use to solve some kind of problem in your code. And we are going to use a design pattern called a singleton. So we are going to make a private UI, private static actually, UI manager. And it's going to be called UI instance, right? So we're going to make a property for it. So public UI manager. It should also be static. And called instance with capital I. And then we are going to do like this. If, need to say get. If my instance with non-capital I, let's call this one actually my instance, so we don't confuse them. So if instance non-capital isn't null, or is null, I mean. So if our instance is null, then we have to set it, because right now it's not set, and we need to set it equal to this UI manager we are in. So UI, let's say instance is equal to get or find object of type UI manager. So in general, a singleton is used when we only have one type of that object in the game, and we would like to access it from other places and still keep the inheritance here. So we say return instance. So this makes sure that when I access the UI manager through my instance, we check if the instance is set. If it's not, then we set it and return it. And because of the structure here, we only have one instance in the game. We will always return the same instance. So to access this, we will have to go to our game manager and say UI manager dot instance dot whatever we want to do. So notice that I can write the name of the script dot instance. The reason that I can do that is because my UI manager is static. If it wasn't static, if it was like this, well, then in our game manager, I wouldn't be able to say UI manager dot instance. It's not there anymore. So that's when something is static, we can access it on the class level. So let's go up here and say static and static, like so. So now that it's static, we can access it on the class level. One thing you need to know, you shouldn't just make everything static, because when something is static, it's shared among all instances. Which means if our enemy, let's say we have this enemy and he has health, if we made his health static, then all enemies in the game would share the same health pool. So if one enemy dies, then all our enemy dies. Okay? So you can't just make stuff static because you want to access it from other places. It changes it so that there are only one instance of it. So that's some very important things to know. What were we doing? We were trying to make this one, and we went here and say UI manager instance, not instantiate, but instance, my instance dot show target frame. We need a target. Well, we can just feed it the current target here. So if we save this and we go to Unity and we take our target frame right here and rename it to target frame, and we go to our UI manager and take the target frame and drag it there, so we have a reference to it, and disable the target frame right there, it will be showing up now when we click the target, like so, as you can see. Don't mind the health, we haven't fixed that yet, but as you can see, it shows up whenever I click on a target. Well, it also needs to be hidden when I deselect the target. So how do we do that? Well, we should create another function called hide frame. So go back to your script and find UI manager and go down here and make a new one called public void hide target frame. Doesn't need to take anything, it just needs to say target frame dot set active false, for now at least. So this will set our target frame to be hidden. And where's the best place to call that? Well, the best place to call that is actually by creating a deselect function inside the NPC. So let's see, we have the NPC here and we already have a deselect function. So in here we can actually hide our target frame. Or actually, I think I don't want to do it here yet because we're going to add some other functionality here in a minute. So it might not work because we have to read write stuff. So instead we will actually go to the game manager. Sorry that I changed my mind, I just figured this will be smarter. Right here in the game manager, if we don't click anything, well then we need to hide it. So we can say UI manager dot instance dot hide target frame, not instantiate my instance, sorry, dot hide target frame. There we go. So now when we hit something, we show the target frame. If we don't hit something, we deselect the target and we hide the target frame. So I hope that makes sense. Sorry about the mix up about the NPC script here, because I want to do something else here. So that's why we're not doing there. So if we play now, I should be able to get a health bar up here and it should be removed when I deselect. So now we can show and hide our unit frame for our enemy. So to update the health, we will have to initialize our health stat on the target frame. So basically we can go to our UI manager again. And in here we'll have to have some kind of health stat. So let's just create that. A private stat, health stat. So this is our health stat, right? For our, what's called our unit frame. We already have one on the player and on the enemy, but we will also need it on the actual unit frame. With that said, we can go to show target frame after we set it active. When we've done that, we can actually initialize it by saying health stat dot initialize. And what do we need to initialize? We need a current value. Well, the current value is the target's current health. That's health. What is it called? It's called my health. Okay, so we can't access the target's health right now because it's on the NPC. So let's see, the NPC is inheriting from character, and character has some health right here, but it's protected. So I would like to access this. So I can create a new property, public stat my health, get return health. Okay, so now I can get the health. So if I save this and jump back to the error here, I should say target my health dot my current value, and target, the max value is target dot my health dot max value. Okay, so every time I target it now, it should be updating the health based on the current value and the max value. So let's save, and if I go back to Unity, stop the game and play again, see it has no reference, of course, because I haven't set the actual target stat anymore, or I mean yet. So to set that, we can go to start. Let's see, we have update here, have start here, and I can say health stat equals target frame dot get component in children stat. So what am I doing here? Well, I have my health stat here, and the health stat is what is going to update this health bar up here. Well, I want to take the target frames component in children stat and reference it here in the script, because I need a reference to this red bar. And to do that, I take target frame, I look through all the children to find this script here. So I could also just make it public and drag it from there, up there and everything, or into the UI manager right here. But let's just do it like that, so it just finds it by itself. So with that done, we should be able to go back in Unity and play the game again. And you can see it just reduces right away because I don't have a target right now. If this was correct, the target frame should be hidden from the start, so we don't see it go down to 0 because we don't have a target. When I take a target, it updates and it says 25 out of 25. But when I attack the target, you'll see it doesn't update. So we haven't added the functionality for updating yet. But if I detarget and target again, it updates to the actual value of my next target. So right now, if it should work, I would have to detarget my enemy every time I want to see an update up here on its unit frame. So we need to do something so that this one updates whenever this health down here also updates. This can be done by using some events and delegates. And we will need to create this inside the NPC script, because everything called NPCs should be able to update the unit frame when it takes damage. For example, if I have an NPC on target that an enemy is killing, well, then I should still be able to update the unit frame. So that's why we put it in the NPC script and not the enemy script. So events are based on delegates, which means that a delegate is used to call an event, and an event is something that we can trigger, and it's something that a function can listen to. So for example, if I have a function that updates the health bar on the unit frame, I can make that function listen to an event, and when event triggers, then we update the unit frame. For example, let's say the enemy takes damage and it triggers the event, and then the unit frame listens to that event and updates itself because the enemy just lost some health. So maybe it sounds a little confusing now when I'm just explaining without showing you anything, but I hope it will make sense when I actually start to write the code. So first of all, we need to create a delegate, and we can do that inside the NPC scripts just above the class declaration. Why are we doing it out here? Well, delegates and events, they should be accessible for everything in our project. So I'm going to create it up here, public delegate. So now I just wrote that I want to define a delegate, and then I need to write the structure of the function that I would like to pair with this delegate, or I would like to be able to listen to this delegate. The function that I would like to use is a damage function, and it takes in some health or some damage that it can use to reduce or change the health. So it doesn't return anything, so the return type is void. And then I need to get this delegate a name. It doesn't matter what the name is, but you should name it something that makes sense. This delegate is going to be health changed. The function that it's going to define, or the function that can listen to this or use it, should take in some health. So let's give it a float called health, and that's it. So now I have defined a delegate that returns nothing and takes in some health. With this done, I can create an event based on the delegate. So I can make a public event called health changed, and it's called health changed. So now I have defined my event. Okay, the next thing is to trigger that event. And when do I want to trigger the event? I want to trigger the event from a function called on health changed. Well, this function needs to take no return value, and it needs to take in health, which is a float, like so. So notice how I named this on health changed, right? If you remember, there's something called on trigger, enter, on collision stay, on all these things in Unity, and that's also because Unity keeps that standard. When they trigger something, well, then they also call it on on trigger, enter, on health stay, and whatever, or on collision stay, I mean, not health stay. Okay, so why do I need this function? Well, the reason that I make this function is because I want to check if something is listening to my event before I trigger it. I could go in here and say, well, health changed is going to be triggered, and we are just going to feed it that health we're giving here. If I do like this, well, then we will get a null reference exception when we try to execute this function if nothing is listening to it. So with that said, if I don't have a target and I try to execute this on health changed, well, then I get a null reference. So it's always good whenever you have an event, before you trigger the event, you need to check if something is listening to it so that you don't get a null reference. And you can do that by saying if health changed isn't null. So if it isn't null, well then someone is listening to me and I can execute. Okay, so this is always good practice to make this structure here. Okay, so before someone can listen to this event, we will have to trigger it somewhere, because if someone would listen to it now, nothing would happen because we're never executing this line of code. So where do we execute this? Well, we execute it in the enemy when he takes damage, and then someone can listen to it, and when the enemy takes damage, we trigger the event. So we do that in here. And where's it smart to trigger that? Well, it would be smart to trigger it in the enemy's take damage function. Right now he doesn't have a function, but we made it so that our damage function in our character is virtual, which means that I can override it in the enemy. So I can go to my enemy and say public override take damage. There we go. So now the enemy is overriding take damage, and it calls this its base damage. I will have to trigger the event after I take damage, because take damage reduces the health and updates it. If I trigger the event before I update it, well then there's nothing to update, right? So I would like to change my health and then trigger the event so that the unit frame will get the right values. If we didn't do that, then it would be one step behind all the time. So when I have 90 health, it will show 100. When I have 80 health, it would show 90, for example, or whatever. Okay, so we need to update first. So to update first, we just make sure we call base before triggering the event, which is on health changed. How much health do we need to give in? Well, it's health dot my current value, because this one updates current value, and we just sent the current value to the unhealth changed event. So now we're triggering an event. If we save this, everything should work as before. Let's see, we have an error somewhere. Just save. I think Unity is not up to date right now with my scripts. Unhealth change does not exist in the current context. It actually does. Just gonna try to close my scripts. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So now everything works as it did before. I can take him on target, can attack him. It doesn't update yet, it doesn't. I can still kill him. I can retarget and it updates the health, and I should still be able to kill him. So nothing is changing because I'm just triggering an event. Now we need to listen to this event to update the bar up here. It's very simple to do that. If we open up our UI manager, we will have to create a new function called update target frame, and it will update our frame. So we have show target frame, hide target frame, and we need to make update target frame. So this function is going to update the frame. How do we usually update the frame? Well, we take health stat. Don't we have health stat up here? Let's see. Heat stat. Yay, that's what I want to call it. Yeah, let's just rename it to health stat. There we go. Go down here and write health stat dot my current value equals value. And what's the value? Well, it's a float I take in here. So now we can call update target frame with a value, so it updates it. This value could also just be named health, actually. It doesn't really matter. You can rename it to health if you want to. So it's up to you. I don't have anything else called health up here, right? Yeah, I don't. Good. So with this done, we need to make this function listen to the actual event on the NPC called health changed. So when this event is triggered by this function inside the enemy when he takes damage, well, then we need to call this function here so that the health is updated based on the health. And funny enough, it takes in a float, which this one also does, because we defined inside the NPC that it should take in a float here. So the health is actually equal to the value inside the function we're triggering, which is this value. This is equal to the health that needs to be updated. Okay, so how do we listen to an event? Well, when we target the NPC, we need to start listening to the event. We can do that by say target dot health changed plus equal new health changed. And what function should we call? Well, update target frame. So this line of code actually says, well, I have an event on my target called health changed. I would like to listen to that event by using the update target frame. So this function now listens to my target's health changed event. And when the health changed event is triggered by taking damage right here, well, then it will execute this function which updates the target frame. So let's give it a go and see what happens. And as you can see, it now updates the frame up here based on whatever happens down here. So every time something happens here, it also happens up here. And we also need to remove it, of course. So that's it for this time. In the next video, we will polish it off so that the target frame disappears when the enemy dies. And we'll also set the correct unit frame. When we target something, it will take the image from that and show it up here in the unit frame. And we'll also make sure that there isn't any bugs. Thanks for watching my video. Please remember that InScope Studios is a community founded page, so please consider clicking the support link on the screen to see how you can support me and get something back in return.